Daf Tes Amud Aleph will begin Daf Ches Amud Beis at the very last line, the middle of the last line on the Amud. We were discussing before the manner in which to measure a revius. Tani, we learned in a Brayso, a revius is equivalent to Chatzi Shminis Tvarnis Ayeshana. It's the equivalent of that measurement that they had in Tiberia, which is called a shminis. It's a half a shminis of the old measurements. So there were newer ones and there are older ones. It's the older one. Amar Rav Yochanan, Aden Didanu. This half shminis measure that the Brayso talks about is the same measurement, the same measuring cup that they had in his time. Velama Karle Atika said, why was it called an old one? Min since it was in his time. So why was it called an old one? It was the one that was in circulation, that was prevalent in his time. So more answers. Some say because it was originally small and it became larger. And some say that when it was enlarged, it was reduced, but not to the size that it had originally been. Now, the size that we measured the revius is the size of the original one. So it varied in size over the course of time. Now, subsequently, in Rav Yochanan's time, it was reduced to the size of the revius. Then it became the one that was in use was the size of the revius. It was reduced even more. But he had to specify and say that it had to be specified to say that it's the old one, because there were other ones, there were newer ones that had a different size, so it had to specify that it's talking about the old one. The kama hu shir shalkai is when you talk about a cup, the size of a cup. What's the size of a cup that holds a revius? Rabbi Yosi b'shem Rabbi Yosi ben Pazi, Rabbi Yosi bar Bivi b'shem Rabbi Shmuel. He says it's etzboim al rum etzbo mechso shlish etzbo. It's the size of 2 etzbois by 2 etzbois with, so that's the length and the width, with a height of a etzba and a half and a shlish etzba. So that's the size of the kli that holds a revius. It's 2 by 2 by 2.7, which is a total of 10.8 cubic etzbois. Tana yavish kazayis divrav nasa. So we have the liquid. We learned in the Mishnah Shabbos that he's chayav if he carries out a minimum amount of wine, and it says that you can mix it with the raw wine and to mix it with water so that it's mozug and it's on a revius. What is the amount of the dry wine if the liquid is congealed? So Tana Yavish Kizayis, the Rav Nosson. Rav Nosson says if it's dried out and it's now the size of a kazayas, he is chai for a haitzah, and because that's the equivalent of a revius. Because when you dry it out, the kazayas in the solid form is the equivalent to a revius in the liquid form. Rabbanan, the Kesari, Rabbi Yosi bar Vevi b'shem Shmuel, I said the Rav Nosson bar Shimon. So they brought this halacha of Nosson bar Shimon, and it says that the minimum is a revius. Right, so for liquids is a revius. Kamal Rav Shimon Amar bar revius, just like Rav Shimon said it's a revius. Kain Amar Rabbi Nosson bar revius the kishigresh yeba kazayis. So Rav Nosson holds like Rav Shimon. He holds that the shear is a revius, and when the revius of a liquid is congealed, and now when it's solid form, it shrinks, and now the equivalent size is a kazayas. So now we're going to discuss other halachas where we have a revius in a liquid and a kazayas in a solid. Rabbi Simon b'shem Rabbi Shuban Levi, son of the name of Shuban Levi, Maisa b'perdus Rabbi Shemesa. There was the Maisa with the donkey, the mule of Rabbi's household that died. B'tiras dama mishum nevela, and they retired the blood from tumas nevela. They said it's not matama tumas nevela. V'shal Rabbi Lazar as Rabbi Simon, and they asked him ad kama. To what amount did they say it's Torah? Meaning, is it Torah completely? It's not considered like the basar of the nevela, the boss of the nevela is matama, the magu masa. Other parts of the animal are not matama, the horns, the hooves. Did he mean to say that the blood is not matama at all, or means that you need a minimum shear, and less than the minimum shear is not matama? Rav didn't pay any attention to his question. Rishu ben Levi, and he asked Rishu ben Levi, and he said, at Revius tar. He said it's only tar if it's up to Revius. But Yesim Revius, Tommy. But if there's more than Revius, then it would, and a Chanami, it would be Tommy. Ubash le Rabbi Elazar ad Deloy Chazer le Rabbi Simon Shemase. And Rabbi Elazar was upset that Rabbi Simon did not answer him when he asked the question. Rabbi Bibi Avi also Masna Adin Uvda, he was relating this Maisa with the mule. Omar le Rabbi Yitzchak bar Bisna, Rabbi Yitzchak bar Bisna said to him, what is the getter over here? Did they say that the amount, that they say that the blood is tor completely regardless of the amount, or a Revius tor, Yesimikan Tomei? Or did they say, no, it's only tor up to Revius, but more than that would be Tomei? But he didn't answer him. He was not goyresid. He was bought by, literally means he kicked him, but it means that he disregarded him. Rabbi Zika said to Rabbi Viki, begin to show just because he asked a question, your boy pay. Begin, not because he asked me the question, but begin to lehavadaiti be by because my mind was not calm and tranquil. That's why I did. I was agitated. Why is that? The Omar Rabbi Chanan said in the klal it says, your life will hang in balance. So Darshan means not only push-up shot is because of enemies, etc., and threats, but even a person who doesn't have security, he doesn't have tranquility. A person doesn't have his own field, he doesn't have his own source of produce, of sustenance, and he has to buy. So he buys, for the whole year, he buys chitim. But he doesn't have the security of knowing that he has his field and that next year he'll have the food for next year as well. And it says you'll be frightened by day and night, means that's even a worse madrega. That's even a different madrega. That means a person has to buy grain from the merchants. He can't buy it for a whole year's worth. He has to buy it in small quantities from the merchant, bit by bit. So he has less security, less tranquility. And you won't have confidence, you won't be sure of your life. Even worse, even a lesser madrega, he has to buy from the baker every day. So he doesn't even have the security of having food for tomorrow. So these types of people, that is considered a klola. And they are agitated, they don't have tranquility. And he says, I have to rely on the baker, so therefore I didn't have the peace of mind. What is the halacha? He says that it's tar, which is mashma, that it's completely tar. The word says, no, my tar, what does it mean tar? Tar melahakshir. This tar that it means over here, that's not qualified, but it doesn't mean legabe tuma. It means tar malahakshir, that the liquids, the 7 liquids, are machshir, something to mekabel tuma. That if some produce or food item, and once it's picked from the ground, it comes into contact with one of the 7 liquids, it's machshir to mekabel tuma. Then if it comes into contact with something tomei, it's tomei. But you need a hechsher first. Now dam is one of the liquids. But he says this dam, the dam in the vela, is not machshir. You need the dam of shchita that spurts out after the shchita, but not the dam of the vela. So that's what he meant. It's tor malahakshir. Avalatamas matame, but it is matame. Taman tanina, we learned in the Mishnah. Dam hasheres kibsara. It says in the Mishnah Machshirin that the blood of the sheres is like the flesh. The tamav in a machshir. It's matama but not machshir. And we have nothing else similar to this. So therefore, isn't that mashma that the blood of others, it's only the sheres, but the blood of others is not matama like the balsa? Isn't that mashma therefore that the dam of nevela is not matama? So it's only the dam of sheres is matama v'ena machshir. Isn't that mashma that the dam of the nevela is not? No, it means kishir to moser. When it means that it's only the sheretz, it means that only the sheretz that the dam is metame in the same amount with the same shear as the bosa. That's only by a sheretz, but that's not by other things. By a sheretz, they're both metame with the shear of an adash of a lentil. But by a nevela, it's not that way. The bosa is kazayas and the dam is a revius, so it's not the same shear. Also, dam metame kazara, but it doesn't mean that it's not metame. No, the dam is metame. It's just not metame in the same shear. Amar Rabbi Yossi says, "Pligi batreina maroi." Two maroim argue on the matter. Chad amar tome. One says it's tome when there is revius or more. It's tome. Chad amar tor. One says even if there's more than a revius, it's still tor. Man amar tome. Rabbi Yehuda, the one that says it's tome, goes with the shita of Rabbi Yehuda. He goes with the shita of Rabbi Yehuda in Masechet Zidius. It says that it's tome. Man amar tor. Rabbi Yeshua ben Beser is like the shita of Yeshua ben Beser that we mentioned before, and it's interpreted to mean that it's tor. It doesn't mean that it's not just not machshir. It means it's tor melatami. Amar le Rav Dumim Domina Chusa. He said v'yes. It's correct to say that Rav Yehuda holds that the blood of a nevela is tummy if there's a revius or more. Because Rav Yehuda Morain of the Bein Asiyah, because he was the paisek for the Bein Asiyah, and we said that the mule in Rebbe's house, the Bein Asiyah Rebbe's house, the Rebbe's mule was tor, and Rav Yeshua ben Levi said that's only if there's less than a revius, but if there's more than a revius, it's tummy. So that goes with the sheet of Rav Yehuda. Coming back to the Shekalim, that we said that a person who's tar from the lishka, the shkolim, he can't go in with a hem on his garment or shoes or sandals because a chashad that he might take from the shkolim and put it in his shoe or put it into the hem, etc. And if he'll become poor, people will say that he became poor because of an oynish, a punishment for stealing the shkolim. If he becomes rich, people say he'll become wealthy because he stole the shkolim. Tana Rabbi Shmuel, Kavetz lo yitram, a long-haired person should not be tarim. Chashad, also because of chashad, they'll say that he put some of the money, some of the coins in his hair. Tani, we learned in a braysa, Agizborim ayimafasa mekilkan. The Gizborim would separate the strands of the threads of the woolen garment. They would separate the threads to show that no money was hidden inside between the threads of their garment. Tani, we learned in the braysa, they would talk to him, they would speak with the person who was tired from the lishka, from the time he went in, from the time that he went out, to ensure that he didn't put any money into his mouth. Frankly, why don't they say fill his mouth with water, and that will prevent him from putting the money into his mouth? Why wasn't that an eitzah? Because the one who's tiring from the lishka has to make a bracha. He has to make a bracha that lahafresh truma, and therefore he can't have his mouth full with water. Rav Shmuel bar Nachman Shem Rav Yonasan, he says, he said, B'Torah u'Nevi Meksuv Matzanu, it's B'Torah u'Nevi Meksuv. We find psukim that relate to this inyan, that a person should make sure that he is above suspicion, that he doesn't do anything that could cause suspicion. So where do we see this? We see Matzanu she'adam tzorach lotzeis yedei brias kederach shu tzorach lotzeis yedei hamakam. He has to be above suspicion, not from the brias, from other people, just like from Hashem. The Torah minayin. Where do we see this in the Torah? Let's see, the pasuk says "V'yisum nekiyim Hashem Yisrael." So it says nekiyim from Hashem, but also Yisrael. B'neviim minayin. Where do we see this in Neviim? Because it says "D'chsiv Kel Elokim Hashem V'Yisrael Hu Yeda." This refers to the Ma'isa when Bnei Gad and Bnei Ruven they put on Mizbeach, and Kol Yisrael came. They thought it would be put up in Mizbeach the Avodah Zarah, and they came to wage war. So they said Hashem knows that it was the Shem Shemaim, and now Yisrael, you will know that it's also the Shem Shemaim. So you see the importance that just like it's Nikim in front of Hashem, it's also that Yisrael, that they should also know that they are innocent. Big Suvim Minayin, where do we sitting? Suvim Dirshu, Umitzah, Chen, Vesecheltai, Beinei Elakim, V'Adam, but it says also in the eyes of Adam. Gamliel Zuga, he said, Shalom Rabbi Yossi Bar Rabbi Buun, he asked them, Eza Mechuvish B'Kulan, which is of them the one that demonstrates this most clearly? Amralei V'Yisim Nikim Hashem Yisrael. That is the one that is the clearest. Zok the Mishnah, Shalbeis Rabbi Gamliel, Hayanichlas, Sheklabein, Etzmoisam. When they were trying to tire him from the Trumas Halishka, from the Lishka, so Rabbi Gamliel, from the household base of Rabbi Gamliel, they delayed contributing the Machzas Shekel until that time. They wanted to ensure that their Machzas Shekel was the one that was going to be used for the Korbanos Sibur, and not the ones that were left behind and were used only for the Shiara Lishka. So therefore, when they were termed, they came in with the money between their fingers to show that they're coming to give money, not to take money, but to contribute the money. They had the money bein esboisab, and they threw it in front of the one who was being tiram the money from the lishka to put it into the boxes. And the one who was tiram had intention to push it into and knock it into the box to make sure that their money would be in the box and therefore their money would be used for the korbanos. Ein ha-tayrim, the one who's being tayrim withdraws the money. He doesn't withdraw the money. He asks the giver, shall I withdraw the money? Shall I be tayrim? And he says 3 times, he says tryim. He said 3 times, meaning to show that this was with the authority of Bezdin. So when he takes the money the first time, as we learned, you do it 3 times your term. You term the money the first time, and then the remaining money he covers over with leather covers, meaning that money that remained, that would be used not for the korbanos, that would be used for the shiora lishka. So he covered it over. He covered it over with leather covers. Then when people continue to bring money and to donate the money, so they donated, it was on top of that leather, on top of that covering. And so when he did the second one, he took the money, if that was there, and what was ever left from the second truma, they also covered that over with leather covers, because that was also shior al-ishka. But the third one he didn't cover anymore because that was the last time that they were tired. So whatever's left in the lishka, whether it's on top of the covers or below the covers, they were the shara lishka. They weren't tired anymore after that. Why did they cover it over with the leather covering? Because we are afraid that he'll forget, and then he might take on the second draw or the third draw from the money that was there from beforehand. And that money that was there from beforehand is not to be used for the korbanos sibur, that's shiora lishka. So therefore he covered it over to make sure that the money would not be taken from there. Tarmas Rishon L'Shem Eretz Yisrael. So he does the first truma is for the people living in Eretz Yisrael. Now, as we'll see later on, that really he was tiring for everybody. But the ones that he makes this declaration, meaning to give this covenant, the first one that are likely to bring the money are the ones in Eretz Yisrael. They're closest to the Beis HaMikdash, they're closest to the Azorah. So he says that it's behalf of the Yidden Eretz Yisrael. And the second one is for the people, the cities that are surrounding Eretz Yisrael. And the third one is for Chutz La'aretz, that further away, l'shem Bavel, l'shem Madai, or l'shem Medinas Harachaikas, from the more distant countries, where presumably their shkolim would come in later. It's for them, but this is only notionally. Really, it's for everybody.